Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. On today's show, we're joined by the EBEA, or the European Bitcoin Energy Association, to talk about mining Bitcoin in Europe. Mostly, we're talking about the new MiCA regulations that passed over the last 2 years and are gradually being rolled out across the continent of Europe and how they affect Bitcoin miners within Europe and also Bitcoin miners outside of Europe. So a lot of people don't think about this, but the regulations in different countries and continents do affect where your operation is at. So that's why we brought in the EBEA. Thank you to them for joining. This was a fascinating conversation about how climate change and politicization of energy grids can lead to detrimental effects for Bitcoin mining operations and even for other large compute like AI. So we dig into all of that and more with Frederik and Sven from the EBEA. More of that in a moment. Before we get to the show, we want to thank CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner, and Foreman Mining, Master Your Mining, for being the lead sponsors of the Mining Pod. You'll hear more from both these sponsors in just a little bit. Okay, on to the conversation. Hey listeners, let's talk about revolutionizing your mining operation with Foreman. This isn't your average management tool. It's an all-in-one solution for reducing costs and significantly boosting your revenue. Foreman brings a cutting-edge dashboard to your fingertips, empowering you with automated energy strategies. This means not only curtailing around real-time prices, but also strategically enhancing your profit margins through demand response. It's about leveraging energy efficiency to its fullest potential. With Foreman, you get a system that scales with your business, inventory management for assets, infrastructure integration, and business intelligence. Foreman elevates the cash flow and production of your entire operation. To see how Foreman can redefine your mining operation standards, visit foreman.mn. With Foreman, you're not just managing a mining operation, you're setting a new standard in the industry.
Accelerated by Compass is the premier accelerator program for Bitcoin mining sites at any stage of development. Our managed services provide expert guidance in site procurement, construction, energy agreements, and mining operations. Compass helps clients meet timelines and expectations for operational excellence, from greenfield to retrofits and everything in between. Don't just mine, excel. Visit compassmining.io now to discover how Accelerated by Compass can power your success.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. On today's show, we're joined by the EBEA. We have Frederik and Sven joining us today to discuss mining Bitcoin in Europe, among other things, energy, compute, AI, all that good stuff. We talk about Europe or European countries mining Bitcoin, I'd say like maybe once or twice a year. And I think those shows do really well because, like I said on this phone to you guys before we recorded, a lot of miners are focused on North America or they're focused on East Asia, but there's a decent sized mining community in Europe and certainly a lot of capital there as well. So thank you for joining the show, and we're looking forward to learning more from both of you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll start out with just an overview on your guys' selves, how you got into Bitcoin mining, classic podcast bio, but then we'll plug in the EBEA and how you guys sort of formed the organization, what the purpose of it is. So Frederik, I'll throw it to you first for that.
Sure. Thanks for that, Will. So name is Frederik Vyncke. I'm originally from Belgium, also a Swedish citizen. My background is in procurement, worked with a lot of larger corporates like Volvo, Siemens, Bombardier, etc. Until I found my calling, I would say, working in data centers to begin with, so around about 8 years ago. And then quickly turned into Bitcoin mining. That was coincidentally because our CTO at the time, he was working closely with KNC Miner, a now defunct Swedish ASICs manufacturer, and that's how it came about. So been in that space ever since, and building up a network, of course, mostly Telegram network, but then also physically meeting during all the nice events that are being organized, US, Europe, etc., Asia. And then, working with our own company, Proprietary Digital, where we also, focus on Europe, but also try to do something globally as well.
Awesome. And Sven, to you.
My name is Sven. I do have a Swedish name, although I'm not affiliated with Sweden in any way. The reason for this is I have got a very long last name, which is Hildebrandt, and my mother decided that I go for the rather short name for the first to go with. So that's the naming thing. My background is traditional finance. I was working for an asset manager when I fell in love with Bitcoin first. Did a little bit of other coinery in the meantime, and then got back out at the end of the lane again, turning more and more Bitcoin maxi each day. I'd say, yeah. And well, obviously, I'm very much interested in the also in the infrastructure side of things, and having dealt with the regulators for basically my whole life, I think it is a very interesting mixture of working like right in between of these two worlds. So there are literally days where I get up and get in a white shirt and a suit, and then have 2 meetings, and then I change and take my hoodie on and go to a Bitcoiner event. And I actually really like this, like being in those two worlds and combining that. And that is also exactly what we do with EBEA, which is short for European Bitcoin Energy Association, where we try to bring together different people from different backgrounds, actually, in order to get people together and then talk to regulators, talk to politicians to gain a better understanding of what this crazy internet money and mining is all about.
Yeah, let's go into the EBEA a little bit more. Tell me about the history of it, how it was founded, how you guys kind of came together. Obviously, you guys have separate backgrounds and histories, and you guys also do different functions at the association. But Frederik or Sven, I'll throw it to you for that one.
Yeah, Frederik, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I can start off, and then we can fill up, of course. So, EBEA was, I think, formed and started because there was a need for this, right? To create a voice for the European Bitcoin miners that were always struggling to fight the good fight against their local politicians who always had, something to say about Bitcoin mining. The normal things, of course, it doesn't create jobs, it takes energy from us, it drowns the world, etc. All these things, and all the people that were, talking during events as well, they thought like, we need a voice, we need someone to teach European, government in Brussels what Bitcoin mining actually is and where it does contribute, and also be an honest voice, because again, like Bitcoin mining is not going to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We know that by now as well, but it does create a valuable input to, the grid situation, to stabilize the grid in Scandinavia and other parts of the world, to take, power that had been generated anyway and provide an offset. So the taxpayer can actually earn money on Bitcoin miners, and also to start developing the grid more and more, because then you bring in other industries that also can participate in this grid development as well. And then, of course, a lot of bright minds, I would say, much brighter than me, that came about to say, let's form this and put this together. I came about quite late in the process of the forming of the EBEA, but I think I hope to contribute, of course, with my on the ground knowledge of working in Scandinavia predominantly.
Yeah, well, and I can jump in there, Frederik, and I can assure you, Will, Frederik does, because Frederik and we're having very regular conversations and exchange about like 10,000 things, because I'm always throwing this, regulatory-ish questions to him, and I say, okay, I need this, I need that, can you show me this or that? And then he's showing me all the stuff from the miner side. So there's really a very beautiful way of working together. Maybe for in regards to the other people that are also in the EBEA and in the founding team, so we have a good mixture of hardcore, or not hardcore, just mining background, so people who are actually mining and are mining themselves. We have Brains as an OS provider as well in there, and a pool. They were a former Slush pool, and then they developed into Brains pool. So we have some pool knowledge there. We have an environmental guy there, Dr. Harald Rauter, who is working at European legislation level, which is tremendously helpful. We have somebody there who is very experienced in energy markets. It's Mike Herman. And then we, of course, do have Rachel. And Rachel is kind of like holding everything together. She is basically the headhunter, the moderator. She does basically everything. It's unbelievable what this woman all puts together. She was actually the one who brought all the different people together at one table and said, "Hey, look, you got to sit down." And she basically also headhunted and recruited me because I'm now also working for one of the largest crypto exchanges in Germany, actually. And it was quite a ride to actually get that moving, also from a political standpoint, from my background, actually, to get this going into the European Bitcoin Energy Association, because especially Germans are pretty interesting when it comes to energy and energy infrastructure. I mean, you heard maybe how crazy we are with all the ESG questions that are going on. So it is particularly sensitive in Germany, I'd say. Yeah, especially also with the political situation that you have here in the country.
Yeah. I think that's like an interesting thing to kind of dive into, because a lot of the listener base is either in the US or in Canada for the show, sprinkling people in the UK. So they're probably a little more familiar, but your average American might not be super familiar with like I'd say, layers of regulation and jurisdictional regulation based on how Europe is kind of laid out. Well, let's start with the political front first. Why, or what does it look like for people to be interested in Bitcoin mining in Europe right now, or even interested in energy? Seems to be on that very politicized climate change front right now. A lot of people are anti-Bitcoin mining. They don't even want to hear about it. They just want it banned. Is that kind of the case, or is that more of just like what Americans think of it as?
Well, I think there's an active debate, of course, ongoing in different countries as well. So we have the European Union, but we also have countries that sort of fall within the European sort of collaboration, like Norway and Iceland. And those countries have a very active discussion about, Iceland said, well, we hope that Bitcoin miners leave the country soon so we can actually focus on data center operations and AI, etc., things that they perceive as adding value. And the same thing happens in Norway, where they want to outright ban it in Norway. Sweden and Finland, which have been sort of the safe havens for cheap renewable energy, right? They have also taken a bit of a stance there, but obviously they listen mostly what's happening in the EU, in Brussels, what's decided there. I think, for instance, Sweden have put it on the table. Of course, the central bank governor has put that forward because central banks don't like Bitcoin at all, obviously, and pushing their envelope in Europe and in Brussels to get this legislation passed through. But Europe said no because it's a free market, right? We cannot ban one industry and for another. We're not polluting. We're just being there and working together with industries and with the grid companies, with the power companies, etc. There's of course a lot of other players in the market that are warming up for this, meaning the energy companies themselves, which I personally believe is going to be the next wave of Bitcoin miners. We already saw it in the US with CleanSpark, people coming from the power industry, iron energy, etc. And we now see that a lot of the players that have a lot of excess energy, meaning like say in Finland, where you can get very cheap PPAs on wind power. Germany has an excess of renewable energy because of their energy reflux that they did. And then the same thing goes in Sweden. There's too much power for now, locally stranded, that needs to be used. It's produced anyway, so why not use it for Bitcoin mining, help stabilize the grid, and let the taxpayer earn the money because we're paying taxes, right, in the country.
Yeah, maybe we'll touching a little bit on how would an American imagine we would meet an American who has never left America and he steps into European soil for the first time. Well, first thing that this American will encounter is that everything is so tiny, and we're having like very small cars and all that type of things. But I believe that he or she would actually think that the Europeans and especially Germans take it a little far when it comes to environmental stuff, not only on the electricity side, but also how it comes to waste control and stuff like that. I believe that this would be the perception. Do I personally believe that it is that way? No, I don't think so, that it personally is that way, because I do believe that a lot of these things actually do make sense. But on the other side, there are also a lot of things that actually do not make sense. And these are the things that we as EBEA try to kind of like hint at and say, hey, look, we basically acknowledge that Bitcoin mining is an energy intensive industry. That is correct. But the energy intensity itself is not the bad thing. So you got to have to look at the full picture. This is basically what we are trying to do. And when you're looking at what is happening right now, it is extremely exciting times, at least for somebody who gets so excited when it comes to regulation, just as myself. Because what is happening is that the Europeans put in the MiCA regulation, which is the markets and crypto assets regulation that actually regulates the whole European countries. So all the European countries are tackled by that. And they introduced, and it's already introduced, and it's already in law, a so-called regulatory technical standard that all the crypto asset service providers, and crypto asset service providers are, for example, all crypto exchanges or crypto custodians. So basically everybody who has something to do with crypto needs to publish ESG reportings beginning January 2025. And that's soon, right? And then you have the challenge that Bitcoin doesn't have a great marketing team and they don't have any lobby departments. But there's other blockchain protocols out there that actually do. And we can see this play further and further materializing. And that's something that I think everybody in the industry should be aware of.
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner. At CleanSpark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale, we've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind CleanSpark's success at cleanspark.com.
Let's talk about the MiCA thing there for a second. That was passed, I believe, last year, maybe the year before that, and feel free to correct me here in a second. But how does that regulation unfold across Europe, and specifically, what does it mean for Bitcoin miners?
Yeah, Frederik, I'll just keep on talking, right? Because you probably won't like to talk about that too much. Alrighty, yeah. So the MiCA regulation is coming in multiple steps over a certain period of time. And the especially interesting thing for the mining industry is in the regulatory technical standards number 2. And these are exactly those ESG disclosures that the different countries do have to make. So right now, there is a consultation period ongoing. So the lawmaking usually works in a way that you have certain, let's say, call it user groups beforehand. So the regulator discusses with a certain amount of people about, like, how should we do this? Should we do it this way? Should we do it that way? That's not public. Then they're doing a consultation period where they actually put all of this into a document. And then they put this document out there. And then the public can actually give feedback on what is in the document. And then all of the feedback gets taken into the document. And the legislator actually decides on what he wants to do. This process is not finalized yet, but you know from history that when that document is opened up to the public for the first time, like 80 or 90% are already set in stone, and the other things are then, just a little bit of amendments, but basically you can see where this is going. And we have not the final version yet, but we do have the preliminary version. And this preliminary version causes some challenges because the crypto asset service providers do have to provide data that are very hard to get and are complicated to come up with. So what we as EBEA are now trying desperately to do is to get more and more people involved, talk to a lot of miners to actually get that data, because it is not data that is Europe centric. We have to get the data for the whole world. And that's actually quite challenging.
Yeah, it seems pretty hard. Like, what kind of data points do you need for that? And are you guys actively collecting that data?
Yeah, so the data points that need to be collected are the types of the machines that are being used, then the waste disposal of these machines, the location of the machines, in the best case, the energy mix that the machines are using. So now tell me how you want to do this with somebody who is mining somewhere with an IP, and you don't even see it because it's behind some IP address. What is the technical word for that?
Like a firewall or IP address blocker or VPN.
Yes, a VPN. Yeah.
That's a huge barrier.
Right. It is literally impossible. And when it is impossible, a best effort clause is taking into place. So then you have to make a best effort to actually get that. And this is what we are trying to do. We're actually trying to help the crypto asset service providers to be able to do the best effort to actually get the best data out there.
So just so I understand this, if that data is not collected, what exactly happens to these Bitcoin miners? Is there fines imposed if you're?
Yeah, it is not the Bitcoin miners. It is the crypto asset service providers. The Bitcoin miners, they are not part of the crypto asset service provider regulation. So they're out of the game, but everybody else in the industry is actually captured. So that is where the problem comes in, right? And if you would not report this at all, then actually you would be losing your license. And that would mean that you actually have to close shop in Europe.
So if I understand correctly, any sort of asset provider or someone who falls under the umbrella has to go and speak to these miners to be able to understand how they're doing their industry, to give that reporting back to the government so then they can continue to do their main business. So even if they're separate companies, they still have to understand their mix.
Yes.
That's wild.
So if you, it gets even wilder. So imagine you are a crypto asset exchange. Imagine your Coinbase. And you're trading 200 tokens, and those 200 tokens have 23 different blockchain layer 1 infrastructures. Then you have to do this for each of the different blockchain infrastructure layers because they use different software and different hardware that are running them.
So can this change? Can they change? Because you said it's preliminary still, right? Because this just doesn't seem feasible. The best, for those listening who aren't super familiar with this, the best studies about Bitcoin mining are still not that good, right? They're decent, but they're still not that good. And this seems like an impossible barrier. So does it make more sense to go and try to change these regulators' minds about the preliminary regulation that's set forward? Or is it hey...
No, that doesn't happen. So the way this is going to play out is that the regulator actually says, "Hey, it would be cool if we would get this, and if you can't get the precise data, then you got to do a best effort." Yeah. So what happens then is that the regulator will be looking into the best efforts from all of the different players. So they will be looking at the Coinbases, they will be looking at us, they will be looking at the different players out there in Europe. And then it will say, okay, they're doing it this way, they're doing it that way, they're doing it this way. And then my suggestion would be that they will be coming back once after kind of like a year of collection of different approaches, and say, okay, with this approach we really like that, with this approach we really like that, and then the regulation will be redefined, and everybody who is then operating in the field has then to obey to this redefined regulation.
That's wild. That's wild. On the energy mix side, I'm assuming that's going to be probably the most important thing that the regulators are going to want. I mean, they'll want the other information, but how does that kind of mix, if you will, into the whole Bitcoin mining story in Europe? From my understanding, a lot of Bitcoin mining in Europe has been in Scandinavia, where there's more hydropower. But are regulators looking for a certain percentage? Are they going to force people to turn off if they're over a certain percentage, or try to economically pressure them not to be mining Bitcoin?
Yes, sorry, Frederik, that I'm taking all of this time with all the exciting regulatory stuff. Well, you're absolutely right, Will. So the most interesting thing is actually where is the energy coming from and what is this for energy? But keep in mind, they are not asking only for the European miners; they are asking for mining worldwide. So the most the larger the miner is, the most impact that miner would have. When we are looking at the current state of all of the studies that are out there, they all use the same methodology. So they are actually looking at the IP address of the miner, and then they are looking at the energy mix of that country, completely regardless of where actually this energy is coming from. So you could be the greenest miner ever, but when you're mining in a country that has not a 100% green energy mix, let's say Paraguay, for example, then this methodology would, or this mix would actually come into play for the calculations. This is also one of the things that Daniel Batten was heavily criticizing in the last months, and rightfully so. But then on the other hand, if you were trying to be like really, really, really 100% correct, you would have to ask all of the miners that are mining, and then they would have to share all of their precise energy mixes with you on a voluntary basis, which is also pretty hard to do.
Pretty impossible. The one that comes to mind is the Cambridge study, which they also use a lot of voluntary IP addresses to understand energy mix. And it's one of the better ones out there, but it's still voluntary. Foundry, Bitcoin mining pool, mostly here in the US, also did something similar with its clients, a voluntary IP address ping, and then they kind of like showed on a map where the different miners are at. Still, it doesn't show like the whole network, and most people would rather remain private. As a private company, you have the ability to do that. But in this case, it seems like you're kind of pivoting, or you're pitting the industry against the industry, right? Where like people need this data to be able to continue operating with their license, but the Bitcoin miners like want to remain private so they don't get shut down. That's kind of how I'm understanding it, which I'm glad to be corrected on it, but it's kind of what I'm picking up.
Well, this is exactly true. But then you have the cool guys like the Frederiks. So you have the miners that you actually can talk to, and they will be because they do have an interest also in actually sharing things with the industry, because more and more miners, and you said Foundry. I was just recently talking to them, and they do 100% understand how regulations work, and so they know that if regulation goes crazy in Europe, that this has a potential spillover effect to the US and then to Asia as well. And they're aware of the fact. And this is good because more and more miners are actually getting that sense of urgency and this feeling. And it takes trust. I mean, when you share data with somebody, you have to trust this person not to do anything stupid with the data. And everything that EBEA would be doing is that we would anonymize the data sets so that you don't even know which miner that was, what the client of the miner is. So we're not sharing any of that, and that's what we're trying to achieve, or one of the things that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, Frederik, I'd love to hear your perspective as a Bitcoin miner on this topic. What's it been like for you guys to boot up all these different regulatory things and compliance things you have to do and work with the EBA on this?
Yeah, so since mining Bitcoin since 2016, of course, it's seen the highs and the lows, of course, and I think most of it comes because we've had a lot of obviously bad players in the market that came and promised a lot. We want to have energy, we want to put 10,000 miners here, we want to create so many jobs, etc. And then they Bitcoin price dropped, the bear market happened, and then they pulled out, left everybody with big debt. The municipalities invested, the power companies invested, and everybody's left behind and say, well, we not again. The next time they come over, we'll just shut the doors and we'll be done with it. But I think now, the latest few years, we've had a lot of savvy Bitcoin miners come to the table and working together with the energy companies directly to say, well, we can engage in this grid stability programs, right? We help you, we get paid. So it's all a give and take. Then we work as well with, taking off power that they produce in excess. So we put some Bitcoin mining containers in proximity to a water dam or anything else, and they get paid. And also the Bitcoin miners get cheap energy and low cost energy, green energy. That's the perfect thing for them. But I think it still needs a lot of convincing because everybody still listens to what the European Union says, the local government says, etc. So within the energy companies, when we speak to them, they understand, Bitcoin mining is something that adds value for them. They make money on it because they get a part of this, grid stability from the national grid companies, etc. But they're afraid to stand up because, nobody wants to be the first one and nobody wants to be the last one, as always, right? So I think there Bitcoin miners can play an active role in actually, gathering behind the EBEA, creating a voice, and then talk to European government and say, well, this is how it actually is, not how you perceive it to be, right? Because there's so many reports out there that spread false information as well. There's reports that are not correct entirely, but there's reports that keep on reiterating these false statements that have been proven wrong time and time again. So I think there we can add a lot of value as a Bitcoin miner as well.
Need ASIC help? Check out Vitamine, one of Bitmain's certified repair shops located in Washington State with satellite offices in Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. PSUs, hashboards, immersion setups, in and out of warranty repair, Vitamine has you covered. Want to train your technicians? Bring Vitamine to your site for hands-on training in the art of ASIC repair, complete with Bitmain AMTC certification. Contact Vitamine today at dan@vmasic.com. Again, that's dan@vmasic.com. When you think of ASIC repair, think Vitamine. Yeah, it seems like a large compliance cost, but I mean, I suppose if those are the rules and there's not another option besides leaving, you have to fight them or work with them. From a Bitcoin mining standpoint, let's zoom out for a second and maybe give like a little geographic understanding to people listening to this show. I think I'm mostly right in saying that most of the hash rate in Europe is from Scandinavia, but there are pockets in different parts of Europe where there's Bitcoin mining. So, Frederik, maybe you could kind of lay that out, and then I'd like to talk about like how these different jurisdictions are working within the regulation that's being outlined in MiCA and within the European Union, within their local regions.
Okay, so yeah, like you mentioned, predominantly it's in Scandinavia because of the abundance of hydroelectric power. So Sweden and Finland being part of the EU, Norway outside of the EU, but still sort of being part of the, of course, of the Nordics. Then there's pockets here and there, but those pockets mostly consist of people that have really, shown that Bitcoin mining can be done in a smart way. Like in the Netherlands, for instance, where they use the excess heat to heat up greenhouses to help stabilize the grid. There's a few good companies here, to grow tulips with the heat. So. Then there's a few companies, I think, in Switzerland as well that work. We ourselves worked with a little project there to help produce heat for housing as well, to help the grid company to transition from what they say by 2030, we have to wane off from natural gas, from fossil fuels. We have to go fully renewable, but then they have a problem statement. Biomass is not renewable. So they cannot use wood pellets anymore. So they have to use some way to generate heat, which is obviously needed in Switzerland during wintertime. And, putting just a stove there doesn't make sense. So we just say the narrative, use your energy twice. You mine Bitcoin with it, first of all. Secondly, you generate heat and that's it, right? So everybody happy in this play. The Bitcoin miner will invest in the CAPEX infrastructure. The customer will get the heat, and then the power, the district heating company makes money because they can sell heat still, right? Then I see a lot of things happening in Spain, because Spain has been, quite high in power price before, but now since they built so much renewable energy, mostly solar, they've have an abundance of renewable energy, and there's a few smaller Bitcoin mining facilities popping up here and there next to all these large solar farms. Italy has not been a big player because they predominantly have natural gas as their power production, but there is some pockets as well there with some hydroelectric. And then I think Eastern Europe has not been a big one either. I think mostly smaller pockets when it comes to Bitcoin mining, but it's all been scattered. So Europe, again, is not a huge, like aggregation. There's not going to be any riots or CleanSpark, etc., of gigawatts of allocation for Bitcoin mining, but there's going to be a distributed scale. And I think that's why also a lot of Bitcoin mining companies will stick around to Europe, because they know that if they go to, let's say, Ethiopia, Paraguay, which are just cheaper countries right now to go to, they will also know we're just one of many, right? And here they can actually make a change and also make money. Of course, that's the narrative for Bitcoin miner as well.
It's interesting. I haven't heard of Bitcoin mining in Spain yet, but that does make sense. Definitely a lot of renewable build outs there. What about companies like Northern Data? And then any thoughts on Southeast Europe? Definitely heard a lot of stuff last Bitcoin bull cycle about Southeast Europe building on some Bitcoin mining.
When it comes to, let's say, like Northern Data, there's a few other companies, of course. I think a lot of these companies are diversifying a lot into AI as well, because AI is actually a perfect play for Bitcoin miner, right? So it's diversifying your income stream, because there's a big demand out there for this, and then you have access to all this power already. And then going through the Bitcoin mining cycles it's a tough job as well, because you have to always reinvest your money to new, more efficient equipment when it comes out. And if you wait for too long, then of course when the next halving comes, you're almost out of play unless you have enough cash on reserve or Bitcoin on your balance sheet. So I think there's a good narrative. But again, AI is also subject to having clients. So I think there's a bit of a challenge for a lot of these companies as well to not to find the client, but to find the right amount of megawatts of clients as well. Having worked as well in the corporate space in the large behemoths like Volvo, Bombardier, and Siemens, I know they work with legacy systems. They're not ready for all of this. They have a lot of data, but to compile all the data to put it forward to an external player, if they're based in Norway or Sweden, that's takes eons almost to actually get this done. So I think it's only the smaller startup AI companies that can work with these big, like say Northern Data as an example. They will actually be helping to funnel that data through. But I think it will take maybe another year or two before this AI boom really kicks off, especially for the Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, that's a good thing to kind of segue over and talk about, is the need for AI compute, which obviously is huge power demand. That's probably the thing that we're mostly focused on in this show. Bitcoin mining in the United States is an interesting relationship where a lot of rural regions, they like the jobs, but they don't like the noise. They don't like the disturbance. And then on the political level, the energy thing has also been a pretty big deal. AI kind of came in, it's sucking up a lot of power, but people are finding it useful. So they're like, it's fine. It's cool. You guys do your AI thing. Bitcoin mining, kind of been on the fence either way, but it does seem like Bitcoin mining and AI are just kind of fall in the same boat together and they're going to be okay. I'm wondering if it's going to be the same in Europe. So maybe just kind of clarifying some of your last thoughts. Is Bitcoin mining the canary in the coal mine for Europe, where Europe is not going to allow massive compute and energy usage because of the politicization of energy usage? Or is Bitcoin mining going to be able to scale with AI growing within the region? I'll throw it back to you, Frederik, for that one. But I'd be curious to get both of your guys' thoughts.
So I think, Bitcoin miners or anybody who's using a lot of energy is competing now with other industries, right? Be it EV battery manufacturers, being EV charging. There's a big hydrogen plant being built in the north of Sweden, for instance, going to take up 1 gigawatt of power. So it's got to be a competition about power. But the good thing is that since the energy crisis in Europe, which hit Europe very hard, I think a lot of European countries are now realizing that they need to have, also renewable energy, but base load most of the time, right? And the base load they can actually provide by building a lot of more nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plants you don't build in 1 to 3; it takes 5 to 10 years. But a lot of these countries have already started allocating, consulting firms, talking to international companies how to do this as well, and actually signing agreements. Whereas countries that never done this before, like Poland, Denmark, even other countries, they're actually getting on the nuclear boat as well. And where we see a lot of power coming online, hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, where this power needs to be consumed as well, either be it by AI compute, be it by Bitcoin mining, or be it by any other industry as well. So,
yeah, maybe adding the regulatory take here. I believe that it is way harder from a regulatory standpoint to make Bitcoin look good when you compare it with AI, because AI, for the usual suspect, it is way easier to grasp why AI is a cool thing, and Bitcoin is just harder actually to understand, and also the benefits that it has to society. So this is also one of the reasons why I'm so enthusiastically kind of like driving this thing forward, because I believe that we are really in a pivotal stage. So I mentioned this ESG disclosures. They will the first ESG disclosures will be happening in January 1st, 2025. It is not too late to actually go and produce something good. So we have a lot of people who are really trying to work to that direction, and it's looking like we could really achieve something great. And if then the regulator is actually, and this is what they will be doing. So they will be looking at the different methodologies that are out there, and they will compare that. And if you, as an industry, are able to put something on the table that is not perfect, but actually better than everything else, then you can make your voice heard in a positive way. And this is what I'm not getting anything, like, personally, right? I'm not getting anything out of it. It is just that I believe, I'm on the right side. I want to be on the right side of history here. And that's the reason why I don't sleep much, and I have I'm having telephone calls with Frederik like each and every weekend, where we're just calling back and forth to sort things out. And that's the reason why I do it, because I do believe that we can make a change in this world. That's what I want to do, right? And it's not too late. It is not too late.
I hear you in the AI part. I do think in the US, we've seen sort of people looking the other way when it comes to AI energy usage. There's been a handful of viral Reddit posts, a handful of New York Times posts, things like that. But it has not received the same skepticism or even anger that Bitcoin mining energy usage has. In Europe, I would assume that leads to legislation like the one we're talking about with MiCA, and perhaps even like the death of that industry if it goes really too far. So I'm wondering, what are some things that you guys would love to see happen to prevent that? Obviously, people joining the EBEA, maybe giving you guys more data for your sort of surveys. But what would be like on the dream list? Would it include like large corporations coming in and lobbying against these sort of things? I'm not really sure, just but like, what are some things that you guys would love to see happen over the next few years to protect Bitcoin mining in Europe?
Frederik, may I go first? I have my wish list. It is laying right here on my right hand side, right? So my wish list in the direct order, right? So the first thing that would be great is the big mining pools actually not acting that secretive anymore and actually sharing data. Do I believe this is going to happen? No. Right? So we tried this. That ain't gonna happen. So the second cool thing would be increasingly working together with Foreman. Foreman as a very, very good system actually to organize all of your miners. They do have the data that we would need to actually be able to build good models, but of course they're also kind of hesitant to what can I share, what can't I share. So I'm trying to figure out a way of making that work. Foreman would be a cool way or a cool source. And the third thing is actually then really going down to all of the miners. And this is actually what I am doing now. I'm knocking on all of the miners' doors and say, hey, you've heard about this legislation, right? So how do we do get the data? That is something that we're doing right now. That would be kind of like the three top things. And then I have another one on the list, and this is meet us at Bitcoin Prague. So when you're visiting Bitcoin Prague, which is from June 13th till June 15th, we will be there with EBEA. We will be also hosting an evening there. So if you are a miner, if you are a mining pool, if you're Foreman, give us a call. We're there.
I'll drop Foreman a note. They are the lead sponsor for the podcast, so we'll see if they can show up. That Foreman data is very interesting. The pool data is very interesting. Hard to get all these things, of course, from private companies, but it's interesting when you have a head-on collision between public policy and the private rights of businesses, which is sort of the conundrum here.
But I don't understand that. I really don't understand that, because it is in the best interest. It is in the best interest of that private companies to share that data, and the data that we are asking for and that we would like to publish are never traceable back to actually the entity that is sharing it. We never share any names of the clients, never share any names of the pools, never share any names of the miner. We just need to know the machine and the location. That's it.
Frederik, I'll throw it up to you. Maybe you can sort of walk out from a miner's perspective the argument for handing over that data, because I definitely agree. Like it's certainly in these miners' favor, but time and time again, miners just don't do this. So from your perspective, what can be the argument to get these things across, and then what's sort of your wish list as well for seeing change?
Yeah, well, what is important, of course, to hand over that data is just, again, like to create that voice in the European Union and to provide, EBEA or whoever it is then fighting, or providing that data is like they know what they're actually providing. The data needs to be as exact as possible, even though it's most of the time it's, the best guess possible, right? Or best effort. So I think a lot of the Bitcoin miners are reluctant to give away because nobody wants to show what they have really under their hood, so to speak, right? They don't want to say, well, I have old generation miners, I have new generation miners. They're costing me that much. They costed me this much. How efficient am I, etc. Because they're all private companies in Europe as well. Right? There's no listed companies, companies that are listed in Europe that operate there. So they wouldn't want to disclose that. But I think it requires a bit more, guidance from all the people involved, say the foremen, the pools, etc., like to help us guide them and to, if needed, sign a document to say, well, we're going to hand over our data to you. You make sure that you, keep it quiet. Then you just extract what you need, and then we're all happy, right? So, and if you don't do that, of course, there's a big fine to it, etc. Then nobody wants to have that, right? Because I think all of us work as sort of, for free. We do our best from EBEA to get this thing across. And then hopefully we come, to a good result, which would then benefit everybody in Europe when it comes to Bitcoin mining, when it comes to, the crypto exchanges, etc., the whole ecosystem, right? Because in a way we have to stick together because it's an attack against the ecosystem, what they're trying to do.
And why should I, as an American miner or as an Asian miner, why should I care? I think that is one of the interesting questions as well. And the answer is so simple. Why should I care? Easy. Because regulation always spills over. And if you have kind of like a white page, there's nothing on it, and you're thinking like, okay, well, we might want to do something, the natural thing to do is to look somewhere else and to look, okay, what have they done? What have they done? What have they done? Irrespective of if that was actually really good or not. But this is the first point that you kind of like go to. So there's an extremely high incentive also for American miners and for Asian miners and also pools to get involved here.
I totally agree with that. We just had a great podcast with Storm Rund of the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, and they passed a pro Bitcoin bill in Oklahoma that they're hoping to template and use all across the U.S. Just as like the opposite spillover effect, where it's pro Bitcoin legislation that causes other states to pass that. So I definitely hear that for the European front. Interesting story to kind of like go together with that podcast. As we sort of wrap up here, I just want to get some concluding thoughts from either of you guys that maybe topics we've missed on. I think you sort of answered my last question there, which is like, why should people outside of Europe care about this? That's a super valid and strong reason for doing so. But I'll give you each like a second here to plug either BTC Prague and what you guys are doing there or something else. Sven, I'll throw it to you first.
Talk to us. I think that's what I want to have. Talk to us. Call us up if you have any question, if you didn't understand anything, if you want to learn more about the MiCA regulation. Just talk to us. In person on Prague would be great, because then you can always combine it with a little personal touch, which I always really like. But it is really about the engagement of the industry. And you can background check everybody of us who's sitting at EBEA until the very end. So we're very happy to do all of that. Just talk to us and make it happen, because now is the time. It is May, and we have to January 1st, 2025, where we gotta have to come up with it. That's not a long time, so we need to get moving now.
Frederik, any final thoughts as we close out?
We could just side with the Sven on that one. So, of course, we're looking for more members, but we also welcome people who not necessarily want to become a member, but want to hear us out, right? They just want to hear what we have to say and then what we can contribute. And I think personally, I want more energy companies to come to us, because they can really rattle the cage of the European Union. They have the power, no pun intended, to actually change things. And if they say, well, we're on board with Bitcoin mining, I know a few already being on board, although they're a bit hush-hush still, say, that would be the best memberships ever, I think, because they could really change the narrative for Bitcoin mining in Europe as well.
Love it. Frederik, Sven, thank you so much for joining the Mining Pod. Some really great information on this show. We'll include some links to what you guys are up to in the show notes as well. But we'll check out what you guys are up to in a few months, I'm sure. And thanks again for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having us.